Hello and welcome back to Weather Not. I'm your host, Connor Friedhoff, here with forecaster Kyle Eck. Now, Kyle, fall seems to be back and we're going to be feeling quite the chill this weekend.
I know, since we've been pretty warm these past few days, getting a cold front later on tomorrow is going to feel like quite a shock to the system. I'll get more into that in my forecast. But what are your nature in the news stories?
Well, there's a lot to be had with nature in the news. First, I'll be talking about a tropical recap covering the whole world. We've had 5 different systems over the last 2 weeks. And to round it out, I'll be talking about a chestnut tree reclamation project that looks to restore some land in Appalachia that was once used for coal mining. How about you for your nature in the news? What do you got today?
So first I'll be talking about Hurricane Fiona and how it impacted portions of Puerto Rico. And on top of that, I'll be getting into when we can be expecting our first glimpses of fall foliage.
That's very excited. Let's not have any delay. Let's get right into the nature in the news.
As we head into autumn on September 22nd, we start to wonder when the leaves will start changing. Across the nation, people can enjoy those fall colors anytime from late September to near Thanksgiving. However, in our neck of the woods, we typically see the most vibrant leaf color in mid-October. Unfortunately, picturesque views of fall-like landscapes aren't always a given. We need to see just the right weather conditions to see those vivid colors. We also need to see a normal amount of precipitation, as flooding and drought can lead to early leaf drop. For leaves to show their best fall colors, warm and sunny days and cool but not freezing nights are required in early fall. Much of northern Pennsylvania has been in drought for much of the past month, which may come as bad news for viewers of scenic fall foliage. Typically, the first freeze of the season signals the end of fall foliage and leaves shrivel up and drop en masse. But we don't normally see our first freeze until near Halloween. So, if you're excited to see the changing colors, instead of pulling a trick, hopefully Mother Nature gives us a treat this autumn.
Though some of us can say we were spared by hurricanes so far, it cannot be said for certain parts of the world. The first half of September saw multiple impactful systems devastate locations around the world. We start in the West Pacific, where 3 separate landfalls have so far accounted for 14 fatalities. Typhoon Hinnamnor's effects stretched across multiple nations bordering the East China Sea. 12 would lose their lives in what is currently the only billion-dollar storm in the West Pacific. Hinnamnor would stall east of Taiwan, bringing a rainfall maximum of 37.3 inches to Jeju Island, South Korea. Just a week later, alarm bells were once again rung as Typhoon Muifa spun up east of the Philippines. Though the storm did not cause any deaths, it goes in the record books as the strongest storm to strike the city of Shanghai, China. Currently in the West Pacific, a new threat has emerged. Severe tropical storm Nanmadol was once a violent typhoon with peak winds of 120 miles per hour. However, the storm rapidly began to weaken once it came into contact with the Kyushu Islands. Despite this, Japan's mostly urbanized state has made street flooding an issue, as the storm remains capable of producing torrents of precipitation. So far, over 200,000 have lost power. Closer to home, Southern California felt the effects of the remnants of Hurricane K. Rainfall totals reached upwards of 5 inches near and around San Diego. Landslides became an issue on portions of Interstate 8. Despite these shortcomings, the remnants were actually beneficial to firefighters battling the Fairview fire in Riverside County. Finally, the Caribbean is in the midst of another meteorological crisis. Hurricane Fiona has left a deluge on multiple islands, including Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Guadalupe. On Guadalupe, Fiona dumped 21 inches of rain, the most since 1995. And on Puerto Rico, nearly the entire island is without electricity, as residents saw anywhere from 6 to 24 inches of rain within a 24-hour period. Humanitarian efforts must heed caution to avoid a crisis like in 2017, when Hurricane Maria devastated the already battered island.
This past weekend, Puerto Rico was devastated by Hurricane Fiona. As of Monday morning, roughly half of the island saw over a foot of rainfall, with mountainous regions having seen over 20 inches of rain. Not only has this been a serious threat to people in Puerto Rico, but winds have also caused extensive damage. As Fiona made landfall near Punta Tocon, Puerto Rico, 75 to 85 mile-per-hour winds brought down trees, knocked out power to the entire island, as well as compromised numerous structures. This week, the residents of Puerto Rico are picking up the pieces on the 5th anniversary of 2017's Hurricane Maria.
Questions have always arisen on how society can repurpose abandoned coal mines. In Appalachia, there may finally be an answer. The mighty chestnut was nearly wiped out by blight many years ago, but a new hybrid species of the former tree may be the solution to a land use problem. The chestnut tree was a staple in frontier life, as the trees themselves would provide sturdy building material as well as a food source. Green Forest's work, a nonprofit, are looking to reintroduce the chestnut, this time as a revival species. Restoring these lands is beneficial for multiple reasons. More trees allow for greater amounts of emission capture, as well as providing ecosystems for species under threat of climate change. The acidic soil left behind by the mines offer an opportunistic environment for these trees to grow, in addition to the historical range of the tree overlapping the mining regions of Appalachia. Since 2009, tens of thousands of chestnut trees have been planted along with millions of other native species. The reforestation of Appalachian mining grounds is a long and arduous process, but the benefits will show as the years go on.
Hello everybody, I'm student meteorologist Kyle Eck here with your Central Pennsylvania forecast. So to kick off our weekend, we have a very expansive high pressure system off to our west. And what does that give us? Well, very dry, very cool, very sunny, and very fall-like conditions. And that's perfect timing because here in Happy Valley, it's the first full day of autumn. Now, off to our west, you can see a very expansive area of rain showers trying to move into our region, but that doesn't make it into our region just yet. I'll get more into that in a bit. But for Saturday, again, very cool, very dry, sunny, and comfortable conditions. Again, thanks due in part by this high pressure system, this time giving more of a northerly breeze off the mountains here in State College. Now by Sunday, a very large low pressure system moves in from the west, bringing along with it a very expansive region of showers. Now by Sunday, we're going to start off pretty sunny here in Happy Valley, but as the day progresses, the rain moves eastward, we see more clouds and rain showers by sunset. The warmth does stay to our south, so we don't get in on any of that. But for Friday, we'll see very comfortable conditions again. With that high pressure in place, all we're getting to is only 62 degrees. Again, very cool for Friday night, going for a low of 43 degrees, so go ahead and turn on your heaters for Friday night. For our Saturday, as the high pressure does begin to move a bit away from us, we do see some more in the way of cloud cover with a high getting near average once again into the mid and upper 60s. In time for our Saturday evening, a very cool, comfortable, and crisp night is ahead with a low getting down to near 50 degrees. And by Sunday, we'll start off pretty dry and pretty nice, but those rain showers do move through by sunset with an afternoon high getting near 70 degrees. Now, if you are going to be outdoors tailgating on Saturday, at 12 o'clock, it's going to be bright sunshine, very nice, so go ahead and maybe wear a jacket because it'll only be 61 degrees. Now, coming up later in the show, we have a feature by Dana Osgood covering space weather.
Many elements go into space weather, and I don't mean the ones on the periodic table. Most people think of the weather on other planets, but it turns out space has just as great an impact here on Earth as it does on everything else in the galaxy. In fact, the weather on other planets is affected by the same things as Earth. But a bit closer to home, space weather is a lot like the weather we experience every day, with many moving parts that takes years of study to master, except this time, they're up in space.
All these sort of mechanisms tie together from the sun to the Earth, or whatever planet you're talking about. And so space weather is that overarching system.
A lot of science goes into studying space weather, such as the solar wind and the interplanetary magnetic field. But really, it all comes down to the sun. The sun is a variable star, so as it goes through changes, it impacts the Sun-Earth system, which in turn influences both the upper atmosphere and the troposphere.
But it really comes down to sort of heliophysics, science and physics of the sun, and how that impacts us here. Mostly here on Earth, but the other planets as well.
The sun has a lot of impacts. The X-rays charge the particles in the upper atmosphere, giving it the name the ionosphere. These charged particles are often absorbed by the upper atmosphere, but this can leave the lower atmosphere vulnerable to other aspects of the sun. Since the ionosphere is charged, it can develop currents, which can also be seen in the troposphere.
If you have currents flowing in the upper atmosphere, kind of like an antenna, it can make currents flow down here if you have conducting paths. power grids, long power lines, train tracks in Europe, pipelines for oil. All of these can get current flowing in them. And you know, big currents flowing in things don't always end well.
According to the National Space Weather Prediction Center, solar flares can produce strong X-rays that degrade or block high-frequency radio waves used for communication. Solar energetic particles can penetrate satellite electronics and cause electrical failure, but a major concern is how the radiation impacts GPS.
But if you're using GPS for more advanced precision stuff, everything from precision agriculture to defense applications, etc., knowing when a space weather storm is degrading GPS accuracies, that's important.
Solar radiation has lasting impacts on GPS and satellites, so they've been engineered specially to resist the negative effects. But the next step in space weather advancements is predicting when solar storms happen. They can be very impactful, so knowing when they can occur would be incredibly useful.
Nowcasting is kind of where we stand, and a little bit of forecasting is where we stand with space weather. And so the point is to move it to where it's a lot more operational.
A few years ago, the National Space Weather Prediction Center started expanding into a broader range of scientists. They now put out a daily prediction of space weather on their website, where you can find the more technical information as well as how these observations will impact people's day-to-day lives.
A lot of times you end up with physicists and electrical engineers studying it, which is great. And a lot of the impact are very technical as well, and biological. But what they wanted were some people that were trained in all of that, but who were also trained in the idea of numerical modeling, forecasting. In other words, they wanted traditional forecasters for meteorology.
Meteorologists have a space in space weather. Solar radiation impacts our lives every day, from air travel to calling a friend to using the map app on your phone to find the nearest target. Therefore, forecasting solar storms and other changes with the sun can have a major impact on how people can plan and react to them. For Whether or Not, I'm Dana Osgood.
And here's a look at your extended forecast. Heading through this weekend, by Friday, it's going to feel very fall-like with a high getting just over 60 degrees. And get ready to turn your heater on overnight. Look at that, 43 overnight on Friday. It's going to be quite a chilly one. Now for the weekend, we do see a bit more warm conditions. That's thanks to high pressure moving offshore of the Atlantic coast. And that does bring the threat for showers by Sunday with a high of 70 degrees. Now heading through our extended forecast, not a raindrop in sight. We have sunny skies all the way through, and along with that, very cool conditions compared to average. So I think it's going to be a cool and dry end to September. Now let's go ahead and get into our Weather Whiz Quiz question with Connor.
Thank you, Kyle. And here is the Weather Whiz Quiz. Today's question is, what day does hurricane season officially end? Is it October 15th? October 30th? November 15th? Or is it November 30th? If you answered November 30th, you are correct. Well, those temperatures certainly signal the start of fall, getting a bit chilly this weekend, and the weekend looks pristine aside from Sunday.
I know it's going to be quite a nice end to the month, so we're getting a treat there.
Yeah, and those temperatures on Saturday, absolute pristine football weather. Looking forward to the game. It's going to be a great weekend for sure.
Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for tuning in to Whether or Not. We will see you next week.